So the last topic in the fourth module is capacity building. So capacity is a combination of all strength and the resources available within the community, society or organization that can reduce the level of the risk or the effect of the disaster. Now we have discussed what is capacity. Now capacity building. If you have a good capacity, then we can reduce the level of the risk or effect of the disaster. Now, the capacity building is actually an ongoing process that equips the official, stakeholder and community to perform their function in a better manner during a crisis or a disaster. That is, in the another words, we can say that it is a usage of the strength and the resources during the disaster. See, if the disaster has been happening, no? So, in the process of capacity building, we must include the event of human resource development, that is using training and organizational development such as improving functioning of the group and organization and institutional development. So these all are the process how you can develop the capacity or you can have the capacity building. And some examples of the capacity are building a permanent house, ownership of the land, adequate food and income sources, family and community support in the time of crisis, local knowledge and good leadership, etc. For example, earthquake capacity building. Earthquake is actually a natural disaster. You can't stop it, but you can reduce the loss which is happening because of the earthquake. See, by building earthquake resistance building, improving leadership for the response and relief team, training for the people who are living at that particular place, the capacity building will strengthen the disaster reduction plan for managing risk and make the governance system more responsive. So we can divide the activity of the capacity building, or there are two types of measures to develop the capacity. So first one is structural solutions can be done. Next, non-structural solutions. A non-structural solution include engineered solutions such as redesigning building and designing physical barriers to the disaster events to reduce the damage. So structural events deals with any physical construction to reduce or avoid the possible impact of the hazard, or the construction side activity is called as structural solution, and it has been mentioned in Sendai framework of priority 4 and 3. Next is non-structural solutions. It includes social solutions such as early warning, evacuation planning and emergency response preparedness. So non-structural solution means all the behavioral responses what you have to take during and after the disaster. If it's a flood reduction plan, in which if we give the training of swimming, they can easily cope up the situation. Next, we can do evacuation of the people when we get a early warning, and also we can educate the people over there what all awareness, what all preparations they must do before the disaster strikes there. So here we lead to educational level and training level improvement. Next, structural and non-structural activities you must perform during the disaster. First one is during the earthquake. What all structural mitigation you have to perform is preparing engineered structures, retrofitting of the existing building. Now, non-structural mitigation is enforcing the building codes, providing public awareness about the earthquake and reduce the possible damages by secondary effects like fire, flood, etc. Okay, so these are the structural and non-structural solution that you must take during the earthquake. Now, next one is landslide. So during the landslide, the structural mitigation what you have to take is drainage correction. Next is engineering structures. You must design the engineering structure in such a way that it should avoid or it should restrict or it should resist landslide. Next is non-structural mitigation. It leads to hazard mapping. From the hazard mapping, you can understand which all area will be affected by the landslide. Then land use regulations, like you should not build the houses at the risky places. You should not cut trees over there. Like that, all land use regulations you can give. Next, you can provide awareness to the people living over there. Okay, so this is about the landslide. Next is about the flood. You know that the Kerala has been affected by the flood around 2 to 3 times. So we have seen all the problems related to the flood. At that time also you can take structural and non-structural solutions to avoid the flood. And our state government is being trying to avoid flood. One is using structural solutions like watershed management, making reservoirs, buildings on the elevated areas, natural water retention basins, implementing flood control measures, dam burst, etc. Now, non-structural mitigation includes mapping of the floodplains, land use control, and flood forecasting and warning. Whenever the flood is coming, you will provide an early warning about it. That is, this much rainfall has been obtained of a particular area, so there's a chance of flood over there. You should make the people evacuate that place. So these are comes under non-structural mitigation of the flood. Next is capacity assessment. To build a capacity assessment, we should know what all capacity we have now, and if there is any capacity which is lacking, that must be developed. So capacity assessment is an analysis of desired capacity against existing capacity. This generates an understanding of the capacity assets and needs, which informs the formulation of the capacity development response. Now, assessing institution and capacity is the central element of preparing and implementing any kind of support. It is also a prerequisite for deciding if and how donor support to the capacity development is feasible. You should understand that it is very complex and delicate to develop the capacity. It's not an easy task because if there is any loopholes in it, then it will affect all disaster risk reduction plan. So it's a very important and not very easy task. It's very complex and delicate task. Now, why are we assessing this capacity, or why assessing capacity is important? After the capacity assessment, we will get information about all the capacity we have now to prevent the disaster. Assessing capacity serves as an input in different process and may support interlinked decisions on first one, strategic and operational choice about overall level of the focus area, operational modalities, and the timing of the aid. If you know where the disaster is going to happen or is happening continuously, so we can focus on that area. We can take all types of measures like structural measures, non-structural measures, and if there is any weak capacity exists, then you have to provide more fund to cope up with the situation. Next is selection of key capacity issues to be included in ongoing policies, dialogues, in monitoring or as an indicator. Next is decision about if and how the development partners can support capacity development process of the partner. So here you can see that many partners will be there and they will be granting support for the capacity development. So we have to take the decision about if and how this partner can support us in the capacity development process. Next one is how to access the capacity. Now, this is also very important. How we can access the capacity. The first one is self-assessment are the best point of the departure. See, disaster has happened at a particular place. So, the vulnerable group will be the local people living over there. And if the capacity assessment is done by this vulnerable group, will be more effective than an external agency doing it. Next is avoiding approaches which focus only on identifying capacity gaps. According to predefined nominative model for good capacity and best capacity practices is that you should avoid focusing on capacity gaps, but you should know that what we have now in the current situation and how can we improve our capacity. That must be the main thing you have to focus on, not on the capacity gaps. Next is look beyond single organization. We have many types of stakeholders. So if we get a capacity assessment at each level of the stakeholders, we can set a more representative data, no? Or you can have good representative data. And next topic is strengthening capacity for reducing the risk. Strengthening capacity for disaster risk reduction has been developed by United Nations Development Program UNDP. So it's basically used to support the developing and high risk countries through its program and services for capacity development and disaster risk reduction. UNDP plays a very major role, provides the strengthening capacity for reducing the risk which is caused by the disaster. And its main objective is to enhance the capability of implementing entities in managing disaster risk to enhance the preparedness and achieve the recovery process. During the earthquake, if our road is being wrecked off or road is being destroyed, then you have to make the recovery mechanism to build the road once again, to make the people come into the normal situation. So this is called as strengthening capacity so that the risk of the disaster can be reduced. So you have two major objectives in this case. One is capacity building for the disaster management to finance strengthening of the disaster management system in the region by augmenting the capacity of the stakeholder and institution. A capacity of the stakeholder and institution, then you have to try to augment or increase the capacity of them. And this includes some activity like capacity building of the state management authority by strengthening its institutional and organizational structure, staffing and resources, and funding of the natural program and regular mock drills for the emergency operations center staff and disaster management officers at the various levels. Next is you have to strengthen the disaster response force by providing training to them, by providing workshop and seminars based on the situations of the disaster. Next is setting up a decision support system and emergency operations center to integrate and analyze the information from multiple sources in integrated geospatial system. This was the first objective. Next objective is technical support for risk reduction and response preparedness to finance the activities such as prevention of hydrometeorological resilience action plan, river morphology studies, urban vulnerability assessment study, upgrading design guidelines and material specification for construction, disaster risk finance and insurance. For all these things, there should be a technical support. So if you provide a technical support for all these things, you can reduce the risk and you can have the preparedness and response also. And students, this was the end of the fourth module. I hope you are okay with the fourth module. Okay, thank you students.